Hello guys, this is CronosDarth with another video, and today we are going to have a closer look to the MV Britannic, or Britannic 3 as some of you may call it. And yeah, last time some of you may remember we had the SS Bremen built by Michael. Today it's the Britannic built by myself. And you know, or you notice it, that we have a new format on this channel, the English tours, so that we can also work a bit more international, and so that most of you can understand what I'm saying. And yeah, I'd like to do a little tour with you across the MV Britannic and also give you some insight and a little overview over the ship and its history. And what's interesting to note is that the Britannic and her sister ship, the Georgic, which I have also built, they were the first diesel-powered vessels of White Star Line, and that is why the prefix MV is associated with these ships, because they are motor vessels and not steam vessels. They are not steam-powered at all. Just diesel engines for the propulsion. And so this was quite a novum for the White Star Line, but not really for ships of that time. There also have been shipping companies that have established diesel-powered ships before, but it was quite new. Let's call it quite new, because there were also other ships of this time, bigger ships like the Bremen, for example, which were still steam-powered, with oil firing, I guess it was. And so this was quite the experiment, and the Britannic originally was meant to accompany a much bigger, call it sister ship, the Oceanic 3 over the Atlantic. So this was the primary concept of White Star, to have a superliner called Oceanic 3. The biggest liner of that time, the fastest liner, the most luxurious liner on the North Atlantic, and to have a smaller sister ship, the Britannic, accompanying her, just serving on the same route from Southampton or Liverpool to New York, and to give the possibility not only to use or to take a big ocean liner, but also to go a bit slower. I don't know what they thought, because I bet the Oceanic 3 would have been much more efficient and much faster than this ship, so why would we need a smaller sister ship to the Oceanic? But I'm sure White Star had their reasons, otherwise they wouldn't have done it. And so they planned and started construction of the Oceanic 3, and also planned and started construction on the MV Britannic. And as much of you may already know, the plan with the Oceanic 3 didn't really work out. There was a financial crisis in the 30s, and so the construction of the Oceanic 3 had to be stopped, and the hull that was already finished, it had to be broken up again. White Star had to quit the project, and they had to focus on their smaller project, the Britannic, and also designed a sister ship to the Britannic, the Georgic, which was based off the designs for the Oceanic 3. And so we didn't really get an Oceanic 3, but we got a much smaller version of her. We got a sister ship for the Britannic. So what's interesting for us now is, how is this ship designed? Does it meet the expectations of the time of the 30s? And what did the ship actually do? Well, it served on the route to New York, yes, accompanying or serving together with the big four ships. I'm not quite sure which ship of the big four was lost in the 30s, or was it in the 20s? I'm not that familiar with the history of the Big Four ships. That's more Robin's part. That's not really my part. But as far as I remember, the Big Four ships, the Adriatic, Baltic, Celtic and Cedric, they lost one of the ships, the Celtic or Cedric, one of these, I think it was the Celtic. And then the Britannic had the opportunity to fit in this gap and to serve on the same route as the other remaining Big Four ships, Adriatic, Baltic and Cedric, and she proved much more efficient because her modern engines required much less personnel, much less crew, and so White Star didn't have that much cost with this ship, and she was quite popular because she was modern and fitted her time better than ships like the Big Four, for example the Adriatic, which was constructed even before the Olympic and the Titanic. So this was the Edwardian era, and now we're in the 30s, and yeah, it's quite the mess if you're a shipping company and stuck with such old ships and have to make money with them, because you cannot really renew your entire fleet. You have to work with what you got. And so this was a problem for White Star, but the Britannic really saved White Star in some kind because she was so efficient and made a lot of money even in times of financial crisis. So White Star has to thank a lot, or has to thank the Britannic a lot for her work and her service during that time. And what's also interesting is that the Britannic is officially the last White Star Line ocean liner that has been scrapped in the 60s. I think it has been sold for scrap in 1960, and by that time the Britannic really was the last ship carrying the White Star hull painting and the White Star flag, operated by Cunard-White Star Line. You're right, the Nomadic still exists. You can visit the Nomadic at Titanic Museum at Belfast, but at the time of the Britannic, when she was scrapped, the Nomadic was long sold to French owners, and they operated her in a different way. So the Nomadic at this time was no longer a White Star liner. And of course not a liner, she's just a tender ship. So even in this point of view, you can say that the Britannic really was the last scrapped White Star Line ocean liner, and the sister ship, the Georgic, was the last constructed White Star Line ocean liner. Okay, now let's have a look. As you can see, on boat deck we have a quite spacious sports field with 2 tennis courts. Tennis was becoming more and more popular in this time, as you can see on ships like the Queen Mary or the Queen Elizabeth, which also were equipped with some tennis courts at least. This sport was becoming more popular on ocean voyages. I can imagine sometimes it was quite difficult because there is much wind on the ocean, there's much wind on the boat deck, and for every one of you who has made a cruise with, I don't know which cruise ship you would choose, and you have visited the top deck, the sun deck, then perhaps on some day you can agree with me that there are high winds up there, and that would pretty much disturb you from doing sports. And so I don't know how they manage it here. These courts are quite hidden behind a superstructure, but I can assure you wind always finds a way. I can imagine that here the disturbance by wind is not as strong as it would be here, but there will be still be an influence, especially if the wind doesn't come from the bow. If it comes from, here from the side or even from the back, then you are absolutely doomed if you'd like to have a little tennis match. Okay, and what's also quite interesting to note are these quite modern seats. Yeah, they are some kind of windproof as they appear, and yeah, I really haven't seen this on any other ship but the Britannic and the Georgic, but it's possible that many ships in the 20s, for example, used seats like that. I don't know. But these are quite modern inventions. So, and as you can see here, this is crew only, so this deck is primarily meant for first class, or better, cabin class passengers. There is no more first class or second class on these ships of the 30s. There's cabin class, there's the new second class, the tourist class, and on many ships, on this ship too, there is a small third class for a small amount of immigrants which were still allowed to enter the United States, but not at the scale of the 10s of 1910 or 1911, for example. So this was over. The big migration from Europe to the United States was over, but some immigrants still were allowed to board such ships and migrate to the USA. And so there were small third-class areas, relatively small third-class areas, which still were operated by the companies to transport immigrants. Okay, and primarily, as I just said, it was meant for cabin class to be here on sun deck, to do some sports, to relax, perhaps to bring some deck chairs up here and just sit here on benches and I don't know, and enjoy the voyage and enjoy the weather. But this is not the promenade deck, because here, this is the limit. And after this limit, after this border, the entire area is for crew. And of course, in case of emergency, for the passengers when they, or if they have to get in the lifeboats. So, okay. But the rest, in regular service, this is just for crew. So what do we have here? We have a lovely bridge. This is an interesting bridge design, a bridge front which is quite flat. If you compare this with the Georgic or with other liners of the 30s, they have more round, more aerodynamic superstructure. And the Britannic falls very flat. It's kind of weird to watch. And but it's also reminding me on these classic White Star liners like the Big Four, which were also quite blocky in their appearance. Perfect ships to be built in Minecraft, because Harland and Wolff has really a talent to build these ships in a way that makes them a bit look like boxes. Okay, but now let's get to the bridge. On top of the bridge you can see a compass-like structure. I couldn't really do more because it's quite complicated to work with these half slabs, and there is not really a totally high structure on the bridge. It's quite decent, so I really couldn't do much more here. And there are also other things. I don't know what these are exactly, but they are there, and I use pictures, I use photographs in order to build these ships, and here I just accepted that these things are on the roof, and then I went to the next room. And also the antenna for the Marconi room, which is down here. This is a radio, or some kind of radio room, but this is just the receiver for the antenna, and it is a radio locating room. So with this room you could locate, for example, U-boats. And the Marconi room is anywhere else. I suppose on this deck. It's been a while since I've been here the last time, so we will look for it later. And then we also have the bridge as a very important room here, which also is equipped with autopilot, with a very early version of an autopilot. The Bremen had the same thing on the bridge, and also had the Britannic. some kind of apparatus here next to the steering wheel. And of course, as you can imagine, the usual things like alert and watertight doors closing and a watertight doors panel and telephones and what they have here. And also, what's that? Navigating room? Yeah, of course. It's quite usual things you can find in here. Oil skins, navigating room. Very usual things. So, now we are back on boat deck, and this entire complex is just for crew. There's not a single passenger cabin up here. It's not like on the Olympic or the Titanic, where you can find staterooms for passengers on the boat deck. This is just for crew. And in here you can have a little chart room, and also offices. Can we also find, yeah, of course, the captain. The structure here of this officer's house, if you want to call it like that, is similar to the house of the Olympic, but also different. It's advanced. And so on the same position or similar position like on the Olympic or Titanic, we can find the sitting room of the captain, and then his bedroom, of course, and after that his bath. And now you can see the crew corridors. Here's the radio room. Up there, yeah, I remember. Up there, there's the radio room and the smoke room for engineers? Engine personnel smoking room, okay. Because the first funnel, you have to know, is just a dummy. The only really working funnel is the second funnel. And the first is just here to make it look a bit more, yeah, like an ocean liner of the old times, to make a better expression from the outside, because if you just have one funnel it looks a bit weird. The Georgic looks like that in her later times, but now we have the Britannic from 1929 and in the 1930s, and the Britannic never lost her first funnel. The Britannic always kept this funnel, which made her look much better in the I think it was the 50s and 60s, or no, not the 60s, but the 50s. The Britannic always looked much more lovely than the Georgic, because the Georgic was sunk during World War II and then salvaged and then refitted and repaired, and she lost her first funnel and just kept her second. Looks kind of weird. So, fan room up here. Every one of you should know what a fan room is, and here is the radio room inside a funnel. Quite lovely. And this is a silent cabin, and also here is a door, and you can just exit the radio room from here and just get some fresh air. Next to the engine room, radio room, is the engine personal smoke room. So here you can find the engineers, or anyone else who's working in the engine room. They can come up here and have a little smoke. And then, okay, this is just a store, but also what you can find here is officers' cabins, like this 6th officer or 5th officer. On the other side you can find, I guess this is a chief officer, yes, chief officer's cabin with a sitting room and his bedroom and a private bath and a toilet and a switchboard room, okay, and of course elevator gear for first class. And what do we have here? First officer, quite standard, yeah, quite small cabins, but White Star wanted to make sure that every one of these officers had sort of a private bath. Yeah, this is a private bath just for the first officer. Yeah, there are also many other officers here. I don't think I have to show every single officer's cabin here. Okay, what is this? Store, but also staff captain, of course, yeah. This is the chief of your entire staff, with a sitting room and a bedroom and a private bathroom. And deck engineers, or a deck engineer. Air ventilation, of course. This is what you can find here. And the engineer's workshop, of course, because this is also, this superstructure is also housing the engine hatch, which is, I don't know where, here it is. Engine hatch. You can get up and down and have some fresh air over here, and yeah, you can also have some access to the engineer's workshop. You have to walk a longer distance to reach that, but you can reach it. That's the most important thing. And of course, what do we have here? Bath, toilet, yes. And of course, deck stewards. And of course, a mess room. Mess room which is much smaller on the Georgic, but on the Britannic is quite large. This is mess for all the officers and deck stewards and everyone who's working up here, or sleeping up here. And there's a hoist to the galley, which provides this room with food, drink and whatever you want to get. Here you can find a tank room and yeah, of course the pantry, which includes a staircase, if you want to call it like that, which leads you down to the galley. It's much like on the Olympic or Titanic. So far so good. This is the crew deck. Now let's get one deck lower on the first passenger deck. This is, I think, Promenade deck, or is it A deck? Promenade deck, of course, because it includes, well, the promenade, quite logic. And yeah, these stairs are not meant for passengers because third class and cabin class still have to be separated. So third class can walk down here and get some sunlight and fresh air, and can also do it down here on their promenade. But this is an area meant for the third class passengers, and it goes up to this marking here, this border, and then usually it is crew only because it can be quite dangerous here on the bow. But this is meant for third class. And also they have these lovely stairs which are only meant for the crew members. If you have to get to the bow, then you just walk through the cabin class areas, and then you get down the stairs, and there you go. On this promenade, well, it's nothing special. We can find deck chairs and benches here. It's quite standard. It's quite, yeah, just like on the Olympic class ships. Just a promenade without any complicated things. Then we have the cabin class entrance and the lovely cabin class staircase. The interior styles on this ship are primarily Tudor style, with some elements of Art Deco. And the Britannic is a much more classic looking motor vessel of White Star Line. And it also had a quite classic look for most, or in comparison with most of the other ships of this time. So White Star really wanted to do, or to create a classic impression here. Very traditional impression. And yeah, they did it with a variety of mixes of Tudor and Art Deco style. The Georgic, she had a different style. She was primarily Art Deco. Quite modern styles. You can also download her and yeah, compare the Britannic and the Georgic to each other, and I think it will spot the difference quite easily. So, on the front of this deck we have the so-called card room. It looks a bit like a room inside a British castle, with this chimney you can find here. And yeah, also the interior designs are simply Tudor style. There's nothing with Art Deco in here. Quite classic designs, quite classic carpet, quite traditional. This room on a later version of the Britannic was replaced by a cocktail bar, I think it was. And a cocktail bar on the front of the passenger deck, of course, it's much more modern and much more fitting with the time the ship was built in than a card room. I can really imagine that this room was that successful, because if they later rebuilt it to a cocktail bar. So, but also in this room, in the later version of the Britannic, not the latest version of the Britannic, but the later version of the Britannic, they just have built in a bar in one of the corners of the room, and the rest of the room pretty much stayed like that until they completely refitted the ship, just to try it out. And so, now we are at the staircase again, and from the staircase we can reach the lounge, the cabin class lounge. It is quite impressive that White Star has gone to the need of having high rooms. You will have something similar in the cabin class dining saloon. On the Olympic class ships, the rooms weren't that high, they were just one deck high. They didn't have a dining saloon, for example, which was that high like the dining saloons on Lusitania or Aquitania or the Imperator class ships, which consumed more than one deck. At least two decks and an additional deck for domes over the dining saloon or something like that. White Star didn't have that really, so on the Olympic class you can find quite standardized rooms which were only one deck high. And here on Britannic and Georgic they have come to the impression that they have to build higher rooms just like the competition, just like Cunard did, or even I think Anchor Line did, and of course German shipping companies also did that, and French shipping companies. So they tried to be able to compete with their competitioners. So, but also a quite interesting Tudor style in here with mirrors and quite classic look of this room, and of course a dance floor and this dome over here. But as you can see, quite pale looking wall elements. So this is not an Edwardian ship here. You can easily make the difference between that, because in an Edwardian ship, and there's a concept of this room which was much more Edwardian, there would have been much more panelings that were more specialized and more carved and more classic like this. So they try to do some carvings here, yes, and it looks quite classic, but they also try to make a more neutral, a more modern impression. And they try to combine it here, and it's quite the interesting look. And yeah, I think every one of you can imagine what you do in a lounge. Then from the lounge we can reach the long gallery. This was a design element on many ships of these times. I think the first ship I know which had such a long gallery was the Aquitania. I don't know if she really was the first ship to introduce the concept of a long gallery, but it's the first ship I can remember. So the Aquitania seemed to start all this with the long galleries, and yeah, ships of the later times like the SS France from 1960 also had galleries for both her classes, for first class and tourist class, and of course many other cabin liners had such galleries. And of course, the Britannic and the Georgic also needed such a gallery. It basically was an addition to the lounge. You can sit here, have some tea, and have some conversations, and enjoy yourself. But it has also some infrastructural properties, because also there is an access to the pantry for the crew, so they can easily bring up some food or drinks here through this hoist and serve it to the passengers. And yeah, from this gallery you can basically reach the most important locations for the cabin class. Lounge over there, the smoke room over there, and of course one of the staircases. It's not the most luxurious staircase in here, it's the aft staircase, but it's still an important staircase in order to connect the cabin areas with the public areas. And also there are other first class areas here. This is children's playroom. The first time White Star has introduced a children's playroom was on the last Britannic, the Britannic that came before this Britannic, the HMHS Britannic. But as you know, the Britannic never made it into passenger service. And so her children's playroom pretty much stayed a concept, but was never really realized and never really lived. So here you can see also some kind of childish Tudor style. There are many childish and colorful paintings on the walls, and also this ceiling, which, well, in Minecraft you can't really build it that correctly, but if you have a look at some concept paintings, in this room looks quite traditional, also held in Tudor style. And yeah, what can I also say is that this is also an interesting area. This is the ladies' retiring room, something like a lavatory for ladies, and this is quite luxurious. I mean, look at this. This is just some kind of reception room for this lavatory. There is the toilet, and then from the toilet you get back in this room and you can wash your hands, but also sit here. I don't know why you would sit here. And you can also use this dressing table here to refresh your makeup, or yeah, check yourself and refresh yourself, or refresh the way you look. So this is basically what many ladies, even in our times, do at the lavatory. But this is very luxurious. I mean, there's even carpet in here. And another interesting room is this drawing room. So this is basically some kind of ladies' room, which is quite interesting because, as some of you may know, Thomas Andrews, the designer or leading designer of the Titanic, has stated that times were changing when the Titanic went on her maiden voyage. So in 1912 already the times were changing, and the ladies didn't find it that attractive to retire themselves or retreat themselves to these drawing rooms. And the drawing rooms and reading and writing rooms were going more and more out of fashion. And so as you can see on a later version of the Olympic, or even on the Britannic, HMHS Britannic, the reading and writing room was a bit smaller because it was not used that frequently. And so I'm quite surprised that this modern ship in the 30s still has a drawing room. I wouldn't have expected that, because I would have expected that the ladies of the 30s were much more modern, but perhaps they still, or some of them still, enjoyed to retreat themselves to these places. And another interesting thing is that this room could also be used as a church. You can see this strange paneling here on the wall. It's an altar, and you can just open this paneling, and then you can use the altar and can you can just yeah, use it for, I don't know the English word, but in German we call it Gottesdienst. And yeah, you can go to church here, basically. It was primarily something for the Catholic audience, I have to add. And yeah, then we can continue our little tour here to the cabin class smoke room. And this also looks quite traditional. It's completely held in Tudor style. It looks like the smoke room or some kind of room in an old castle. And yeah, that's exactly how it was supposed to look. Classic, traditional style. And I don't think I have to explain something in here. I think every one of you knows what a smoke room is. And after the smoke room, you can visit the veranda. Yeah, veranda, also some kind of cafe. You can have some cake and some tea here. You can enjoy the beautiful weather. You know, fresh air comes through this large door inside here if the weather is good enough to do that. And if you have bad weather, then you just close the door and there's no problem. And that's very interesting, because on the Georgic you can see that the ship is quite more modern. And the Georgic on this position has a bar, some kind of bar, cocktail bar, and is directly connected through an open entrance, through open connection with a modern looking smoking room. So the Georgic is much more the modern ship, and the Britannic tries to be old-fashioned, but was very, very popular, even in the 50s. But I think she also has to thank that, yeah, I think she also has to thank that to yeah, her owners, which had her rebuilt in, I don't know when it was, but the Britannic was modernized at some moments of her story, of her history, and yeah, she got new interior, complete new interior. The classic style was scrapped, and a modern style which was similar like on the Queen Mary, was introduced on a completely refurbished and remastered Britannic. So I think this is also a reason for her popularity at modern times. And yeah, this is also quite strange, because here you can see a superstructure that contains the gymnasium, and it's completely separated from the rest of the cabin class, which is quite interesting. I don't know why they put it here, to get a little distance to people doing sports or something like that, I don't know. But this is quite the standard gymnasium. I think most of these devices in here should be common knowledge. And you can also find a darkroom here. So if you're a photograph and you taken lots of photos in here on the Britannic, then you can just develop these photos in here, and yeah, wonderful that they still put some thoughts on the photographs, which, or who would like to develop their photographs directly on the ship. And also lavatory, yeah, of course, if you're back here, then if you have to go to a toilet, you would not be so pleased if you would have to walk a marathon just to reach the next lavatory. Interesting is also this entrance, which will lead you to the aft elevator of the first, the cabin class. And there you have another entrance into the smoke room again. Okay, let's check out the next deck. this deck is not just for cabin class, so perhaps we should do the cabin class first and then come to tourist class. So next deck is deck A in cabin class, and here you have primarily a cabin deck. We have this beautiful suite here, which a quite cozy sitting room, but as you can see it's all quite small. And this interesting cabin which also had botanical elements, and I think it was colonial style. Many of these styles, Tudor or colonial style, you can spot on the Britannic, was also used on, or were also used on the Olympic of the 30s. The Olympic had a refurbishment in the 30s, and then she got these new interior styles. And but I have made so much videos in the past about the Olympic and her different versions and styles, so you can just watch them. They are in German, but perhaps you can understand something. And perhaps in the future I will also do some English videos of Olympic, and perhaps we can have a good time then on the Olympic, but now I just have to send you over to the German videos. But yeah, this is some kind of colonial style, later used on, or at the same time used on the Olympic. And of course some other decent styles here, and this, but this is not to compare with the luxurious and extraordinary suite rooms on the Olympic or the Titanic or even the Britannic. No, this is a much lesser version of these suite rooms. And also we can find many other interesting styles, and as you can see there are still some issues here because this ship originally was built in Minecraft version 1.12, and then we switched over to 1.14 and then to 1.15.2, and I had to remake the entire ceiling because quartz is quite different in the 1.12. And it works differently in the 1.14, and so I had to change some things, and there are still some issues on this ship, but I will make an update and correct these little issues, and then I think we will be fine. So there's also this front, and it ends quite quickly. I think the third class we will do at the end of this video. So there are simply cabins. Standard cabins, no special styles, just what you need. Wardrobes, dressing tables, beds, and of course bathrooms, which you would share with your neighbor. And what can I also say? The interior styles in here, I try to keep them quite modern but also classic. Perhaps you can discover all these different interior styles by yourself by downloading the ship and just make your own tour. And back here the cabin class is over. So we get to the aft staircase. It's just a little staircase here on the side of the ship, and it's connected with this elevator here on the aft end, and it leads you all down to the swimming bath, which we will see later. Also quite interesting is the ladies' hairdressing saloon, which is also quite small, and on the other side the gentleman's barber shop. So, okay, so far for this deck for the cabin class. This of course is the style of the aft staircase, and now we switch to deck B, and as you can see here, more cabins over cabins and some interesting interior styles which seem to be quite classy. And also here is the aft end of the cabin class. This is crew, by the way. This is a crew corridor. So Interesting is that on the same position here on this second cabin deck, on Olympic it would be C deck, there's also a surgery at the aft end. Here, surgery, and next to that you have the assistant surgeon's cabin and also the surgeon's cabin. So this is quite interesting, that they always put their surgery on this side on the ship and at this end of the ship. Yeah. And of course there's this staircase again, many cabins upon cabins. And this is also the deck where the aft staircase ends. So this is it for this staircase. And we will get to this important deck. This is some kind of lobby here on deck B. You can find the purser's office here and his private office. You also can find the inquiry office over here, the baggage master and wireless, and mail office, an office for many different occasions, and of course the chief steward's cabin. So this is the place to meet. There's also a shop for Kodak films, so even a shop which would support photographs. And also a board shop. So this is the place to meet, to do your business. And at the fore end we also have cabins. Quite standard cabins, nothing special. And over here we have third class. So what we're going to do is we switch to the next deck, and this is deck C. The last deck for the cabin class. This is the main entrance, as you can see here. The Georgic has more main entrances, but the Britannic only has some entrances down here. And this is also the entrance lobby. Here's the elevator of first class or cabin class, as I have to call it here. And yeah, this is the dining saloon. Dining saloon of cabin class. Looks a bit like an old castle again, especially the middle part, which is quite high, as I teased before. They have used the deck over this deck and just created an empty space here to create this kind of dome, which they did not really do on their past ships, especially on the Olympic class. They just had this one deck dining saloon, and this is a two deck dining saloon. So this is quite the advancement, and of course this lovely interior, which really makes you feel like being in an old castle here, with much mirrors and old stone carvings, and of course these paintings on the ceiling, and also classic paintings here on the walls, and yeah, it's quite Tudor style in here. And there's also one last area of cabin class we have not visited yet, and that's the swimming bath. So we have to go down all these stairs, and then here's a swimming pool, which is also quite classic. It's not completely modern, but also not completely classic. It's something in between, which makes this style quite interesting. So, okay. And then we have finished the cabin class, so I think it's time now to introduce to you the tourist class, which starts down here. This is their main promenade. Here's their border, they are not allowed to cross it, and then they can relax here, get some fresh air, walk a bit, and of course get some sun over here. And this is their sun deck, And as you will notice very quickly, the style inside the tourist class is basically the same style like in cabin class, but just a bit lesser. It's just not that over the top some kind, like in cabin class. It's much more tourist-like. It's much more second class in here, but still the same style. So this is the children's playroom. We have some interesting paintings in here. And of course many opportunities to spend your time here as a child. Then of course the staircase. Of course the cabin class staircase is much more luxurious and colorful, but this is still Tudor style in here, and it's just a transit zone so that you just can reach your rooms you have to go to. And from this staircase you can not just reach the children's playroom, but also here the smoke room or the ladies' room. Ladies' room still prominent on this ship, just like the drawing room and cabin class. And as you can see, this is really a decent style, just a bit more decent in comparison to the ladies or drawing room in cabin class. And the smoke room has the same Tudor style elements, just like the cabin class smoke room. And they wouldn't really change much on the Georgic. Georgic has taken really much design elements from the tourist class of the Britannic and put it into her own interior. Of course, here and there are some changes on the Georgic, a bit more Art Deco changes in the dining saloon or the ladies' room, but the smoke room is almost exactly the same. And then if you get down here, you are on deck B, and deck B is primarily the lounge deck, of course, but you can also go out here and come to another promenade and go for a walk here. And you can also walk around until you reach the stern section of the ship. The interesting part here is that they have an additional smoke room in an extra superstructure building here at the aft end of the ship. This is an additional smoke room on the Britannic of the tourist class, and on the Georgic they don't have the smoke room anymore, because why would you do that? Why another smoke room? Even I don't get it. So back to the tourist. Okay, this is still tourist class. This is their aft staircase here, just to connect the different decks to each other in case of emergency. Much passengers must be evacuated very quickly, and so you need more staircases, and this is just a very pragmatic staircase. It doesn't have quite the style, it's not really mentioned on photos or something like that, or in brochures or articles. It's just there, so that you can get down or up or whatever you do in the staircase. And of course, this is the second class or tourist class lounge. The style is quite similar to the lounge of cabin class again. Of course, this room is not 2 decks high, this is just 1 deck high. I mean, it's just tourist class, what would you expect? But pretty much the same. And there's also an altar here, so if you want to go to church on Sundays, you can just go here in the tourist class lounge, and then you can do your Gottesdienst here. Yeah, Gottesdienst in German. If you would translate it to English literally, then you would translate it with service for God. This is what Germans would call their visit to church at Sundays. Service for God, or God service. And yeah, let's get one deck down, and now we have the business place of the tourist class. Here's the purser's office, and over there is the information office, and the Georgic, interestingly, has quit on this information office and has just put barbershop and the ladies hairdresser here with a little shop for souvenirs. Quite an interesting ship. But the Britannic is much more classic, much more standardized, and so we get the standard stuff here. And of course the dining saloon of tourist class, which is not that much like the dining saloon of cabin class. It has its pretty personal, unique style. Yeah, but it's also some kind of Tudor style, just a bit more decent. And of course you can find many cabins here. The cabins go up to the peak of the stern. Yeah. Up to the stern and the steering engine. There will be so many tourist class cabins, and these are the cabins with lovely red carpet, which is also equipped with a darker carpet and white walls and even plants in here. And yeah. So the color scheme is quite original. You can trust the scheme. I have seen color photography of one of these rooms, and it's quite like that. And so this is deck D, the last tourist class areas. This is their main entrance. Here's a Boswick gate, interestingly. I don't know why. There is no entrance for third class here, so why would they close this? I don't know. And there's also a crew staircase, which leads you up here. Just another emergency staircase, which leads you in this crew corridor, and then you can go out here and find your way up to the boat deck, where you can be saved. Yeah, but this is it for the tourist class. As you can imagine, tourist class doesn't get an own swimming pool. Now we get to third class. They can walk up here. This is one of their entrances, goes down here in this open promenade. And then they have the superstructure here on the front with stairs leading down, and also some crew entrance, okay. Yeah, and if you walk these stairs down, then you just can walk more stairs down, so the third class has been banned to the bow and to the depths of the ship. And of course we have lounge, and this lounge is quite luxurious for third class, so they really tried to improve the concept of third class on these ships. Third class passengers were valuable at these times. Every single passenger was valuable, and so they also got a bit more beautiful interior. And also an altar, which has been hidden behind this paneling, and if you want to go to church as a third class passenger, then you do it here in the lounge. Behind the lounge, well, there's just a border to cabin class, which you are not allowed to cross in third class. And then over these stairs you can just get down here, and there's a purser's office, an information office for you, and there is also a smoke room over here, which also has Tudor style, so the smoke rooms never change on this ship. But the Georgic almost has the same smoke room, just like the Britannic, so it didn't really change something or that much in tourist and third class. But at least something was changed. And here we have a barbershop designated to the third class. And of course the third class main entrance. They enter the ship here, come to this corridor. There are typical third class cabins, standard cabins here with with standard floor and just furniture that needs to work but isn't really beautiful. But hey, it's just third class, what do you expect? Yeah, and of course cabins and corridors and stairs and you really can imagine what third class on these ships looks like. Yeah, cabins upon cabins. And stairs upon stairs. And of course their dining saloon. Third class dining room, also quite lovely, different paneling, quite the colored third class area, which is surprising. But if you have seen the lounge and if you know that even the third class passengers were becoming more and more valuable for the shipping companies, then you can imagine that they would also put great effort in the interior of third class. Because there was also competition on this market. And yeah, there were also additional third class dining saloons, so if you have more third class passengers, you can just use these additional dining saloon areas to feed more of these passengers and to be flexible in some kind. And behind that we have the crew area, we have the kitchen, or better the galley area, which is connected via this pantry to the main galley of the ship. I just fly around here and let you have some look. It won't explain too much. I guess this is something for a personal tour by yourself. It's quite a standard galley. I mean, it's nothing that special. So, okay. We have seen third class and now it's time to have a look at the engine room, and there you can see these beautiful and large diesel engines built by Harland and Wolff, and the concept of diesel powered vessels, and of course the concept of the MV Britannic. So for example her diesel engines or her look from the outside, this flat superstructure on the bow. This concept was also used for ships like the Winchester Castle, I think, or even the Windsor Castle and the Arundel Castle, which were built before the Britannic. So the Britannic basically took the design from them, but Harland and Wolff, especially for Union Castle Line, built much ships of similar design. Yeah, and there's also not just the main engine room with the diesel engines, there's also an auxiliary engine room with diesel generators for production of power, electricity, and what you can imagine. So there I think you have to read some interesting books about these cabin liners to understand them a bit more. I just wanted to take you through this beautiful ship and just introduce you to the new concept of White Star. If there are any questions, we can discuss them in the commentary section under this video. And yeah, this is basically it, guys, so I would like to welcome you again in the next video, and goodbye so far.